Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the StockCharts studio here in Redmond, Washington. My name is Grayson Roze. I am delighted to be back with you for another weekly episode. We've got a market that is doing crazy things, but the good news is we have a brand new tool that's going to help you see all of it. Now, we covered this tool a little bit last week, so we're going to go over it a little bit more from a different perspective this week, though. Instead of just kind of touching on what this tool is, what it does, I want to actually talk to you a little bit more about how I'm using it, what I'm seeing on this page right now in this current market climate that we're in. But we've got another announcement. We've got a brand new Market Summary ChartPack. This is an accompanying chart pack, goes along with this new tool that we have just released. So all of the charts that go along with all of the indexes, the lists, all that stuff that's on this page, which we're going to take a look at in just a minute, you can get all of that stuff in your own StockCharts account in one click. We've bundled it all up. We've packaged all of these 26 chart lists. I believe it's 26 lists full of charts. And you can get all of that installed in your own account in just one click. So you got a new market summary page. You got a new single stop, one-stop shop kind of resource for seeing everything that's happening in the markets. And now with this new chart pack that we've just rolled out, you got all the charts that you could ever need installed in your own account. You can start to customize those, make them your own, or use them as is right out of the box. A ton has happened here in the last week. This has been just madness in the markets, but madness on the StockCharts platform as well, with so much coming at you. So excited to dig back into this new market summary page. Now, I tweeted this out earlier today. I said, I'm going to say it, okay? We've done a lot of things here at StockCharts in the past decade. We've released new charting platforms, tons and tons of new data. We're covering new markets. We got so many things that have come out in the last decade. But I genuinely think this new market summary page could be my favorite feature that we've released in the last decade. And the reason for that is kind of twofold. One, it answers a question, well, I guess kind of responds to a comment that I've heard from so many of you guys, from StockCharts users over the last 10 years, maybe even longer. I've had a ton of people approach me and say, hey, Grayson, I love StockCharts. I know it's got all of the data that I need to truly understand everything that's happening out there in the markets, but my frustration is that it's all kind of scattered around. I have to go search for the list, search for the data sets, create the charts myself. I got to do a lot of work to actually kind of see what's happening in the markets and come up with my process and how I'm going to see it all on StockCharts. And to be honest, that's been kind of true. Now, our outgoing market summary page did a great job many, many years ago when it was released, but it got a little old, it got a little stale. So we have refreshed that, which is so exciting. We've taken steps over time with, for instance, our customizable market dashboard, the members dashboard. We've taken steps to kind of remedy that problem. But this one is a huge step forward. We have now solved that problem. We've taken all of the data that we typically like to use to understand truly what's happening in the markets. Again, not just what are the major indexes doing, but what's actually happening beneath the surface. When we drill down into breadth and sentiment, investor participation, how people are feeling, what's happening with the sectors, the industries, what's happening across asset classes, different intermarket relationships, all of that good stuff. We have put all of that together on one page for you, all in one place. This really is taking things that have existed around the StockCharts platform for a long, long period of time, but it's putting them all in one place for you. So that new page, in concert with this new chart pack, which gives you all of those charts, all of those lists in your own account, I got to say it, I think this really is kind of one of my favorite things that we've released on the site, on the platform in the last 10 years. Now, I got to say, I'm also biased because here's kind of where this came from. A couple of months ago, I actually took off on paternity leave. My wife and I had our first baby. Yay, go me. We had our first baby, though, and I took off on paternity leave for a little while. So I was actually away from StockCharts for the first time in quite some time. I was away from StockCharts for an extended period of time. And in that opportunity to kind of step back, I did a lot of reflecting on exactly this issue. The fact that kind of gathering all of that data and seeing everything that's happening in the markets is kind of a manual process, or has been a manual process. And so when I came back after paternity leave, I said to the team, we need to fix this. We need to create a market dashboard that really puts everything all in one place. And naturally, the team said, all right, well, tell us everything that you need to see. So this page, this tool, this feature is near and dear to my heart, because realistically, this is everything that I want to see on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and even beyond on a monthly basis, things like that. All of the things that I use in my own process as an active trader, as an active investor, the things that I want to understand about the markets, it's all here. We basically took everything that I want to see. We took my process and we said, let's build a page around it. So this is a unique tool because it really is something that I can share with you straight out of my own process. It's not, hey, some people asked us for this and here's kind of how it works. It's me saying, this is what I want to see, and I'm going to show you how I like to use it. So we're going to do a little bit more of that on the show today. Now, before we jump over to that page, I want to make sure that you know how to get this chart back. Because as we go through, we're going to talk about some of these charts. I'm going to jump over to a few of them, make sure that you're aware of how to get those individual charts. So I want to make sure you are aware of the chart back. So let's jump over to the StockCharts platform, and we'll get it going. All right, so we are starting on the market summary page, but from here, I want to make sure that you know how to get to that new chart pack. First and foremost, if you want to get to the market summary page, you can come up to the charts and tools menu anywhere you are across the entire StockCharts platform. Look up in that blue navigation bar, look for that charts and tools menu, and you can get to this new market summary page that we're going to talk about right from there. Under research tools, you can get there. You can also get there from our charts and tools page itself. We've got links on the members dashboard as well. Lots and lots of different ways to get here. But this is definitely the easiest. Up there, charts and tools. Hit that market summary link. That's going to take you right here. I'm going to pause here, though, for a second because in this menu, and again, on that charts and tools page, we also have a link down here to chart packs. It's under that members only group. You can link over to those chart packs that you can install directly into your account. So when you do that, you'll be jumped over to our marketplace page, but you can look for the big green card that says StockCharts Market Summary Chart Pack. That is going to take you right over to this landing page for the new Market Summary Chart Pack. Now, I have not installed this in my account because I want to show you how easy it is to install this in your account. You can do this as a StockCharts member. Log into your account, make sure you're logged in, and then come on over to this page, hit that big green Install Now button, and you'll see how quick it is. These are all of the lists that you're going to get in your account. So as you're going to see, this is about 26 lists, and it maps directly with that market summary page. So we're going to take all of those indexes that we've got listed on that market summary page, all of the breadth metrics, all of the sentiment indicators, all of the sectors and industry groups, all of the other asset classes as well, commodities and currencies and cryptos and all that good stuff. All of that is going to be packaged up. It's going to be bundled into these different lists, and all of these are going to be installed into your account in one click. Now, they're going to come pre-formatted with all the charts that you need straight out of that market summary page, which we'll show you. But if you want to start customizing these, if you want to make changes, if you want to change the time frame, if you want to add indicators that matter to you, anything that you want to do with these charts, they're installed into your account. So you can make changes to them, you can save them, and they're going to be there for you. So you got a couple of different ways to use this market summary resource. This is why I think it really is one of my favorite new features. You've got the page itself, which is fantastic. All of the data displayed right there for you. But you can also bring these charts directly into your own account, make them your own, and then you kind of have the best of both worlds, right? You've got the data on that page, that resource right there for you that's not going to change, but you've also got the sort of accompanying complementary charts that go along with it that you can really make your own. So let's take a look at exactly how easy it is to install this into your own account. I'm going to hit that green button. It's going to load for a sec. There we go. Chart pack installed. Your new chart pack has been installed. This is free. You do not have to pay for this. As long as you are a StockCharts member, you can get this. And when you hit that open chart list button, it's going to take you over to the dashboard. And when you scroll all the way down to all of your chart lists, what you're going to find is this whole new group. Now you can see everything that is that starts with market sum in brackets. All of these chart lists just got installed into my account in that one click. And I can now click into any of these. For instance, I can jump into country funds. I've got all the country funds now in a chart list in my account. I can jump over to something like chart list view and I can scroll through all of these lists. As you can see, they're all pre-formatted in a specific way. We've got a couple of moving averages on there, volume and the RSI as well. This is how I typically like to look at things. Again, we've pulled a lot of this from my own account, from my own process. So all of those country funds are now in here for you. All of those market summary lists are available in your account as soon as you install this chart pack. And it's not just basic lists full of major indexes or country funds, things like that. When we do something like our Keller market model, you'll see that you're going to get these very customized charts that track along, again, with that market summary page. So it makes it really, really easy to kind of take that market summary page and bring it into your own process in your own account. If you want something like, let's say, the bullish percent indexes for the major indexes, well, you can click over to that list once you've installed that chart pack, and you're going to get all of these pre-formatted charts for all of those major BPIs, again, installed directly in your own account. You don't have to do any work to set these up. They're going to be installed right there for you. If you want to customize them, you can, but it makes it very, very easy to get started with all of these different lists. Breadth metrics, sentiment stuff, offense and defense ratios. We've even added a couple of extra things like some economic indexes. So different things you might want to track, especially if you're focused on more long-term, strength of the economy, different things like that. So we got like U.S. GDP, U.S. unemployment rate, housing starts, industrial production. Lots of things that I like to keep up with on a monthly, maybe even a quarterly, but monthly and quarterly kind of basis, some of those longer-term economic indicators. So these are also going to be included in that market summary chart pack. It is an incredible way to boost your StockCharts account with great charts packed full of, great lists packed full of great charts that tracks along with this market summary page. So definitely check that out. Again, remember, charts and tools menu up in the top right corner, hit chart packs. That's going to take you right down here. Look for that green banner. Give that a click. You can install this in your own account. Now, not that you would want to, but if you ever do want to uninstall that, well, as long as you haven't changed the names, we can actually reach back in and uninstall those lists from your account. So you can jump back over here, hit that uninstall button. Makes it really easy. So a fantastic resource. Want to make sure that everyone is available or aware that this is available now on the StockCharts platform. So with that out of the way, let's jump back over to this market summary page. We'll talk about what's going on with this page. Now, last week, we spent a lot of time just covering kind of what's on this page, where things are, what the buttons do, that kind of thing. This week, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about kind of the things that I'm seeing and how I'm actually using this page. If you do want to jump back over to that original kind of tour, that walkthrough video, we do have that linked up at the top of this page. So click that announcement video link up in that blue banner right at the top of this page, and that'll open that up. You can catch up on that original walkthrough video that's a little bit more of an explanation, a tutorial on kind of how to use the page. The one thing I want to remind you of as we go through here is that everything on this page, for the most part, is clickable. If you see it, you can probably click on it, especially when we get down into some of the things like the breadth panels, the sentiment panels, the new highs and the new lows panel. That's one that I want to make sure you're aware of. You can click on different things in all of these different panels to actually pull up, for instance, the index that we're talking about in that panel or a chart that relates to whatever is in that panel. Keep that in the back of your brain as you're going through and using this page. Pretty much everything here is clickable. That's one thing that I want to make sure you're aware of. The other thing I want to make sure that you are aware of is up here in the top of this page, the time frame menu. Very, very helpful. This is going to default to today. It's also going to default to have auto refresh on. So when you're looking at this thing during market hours, the data is going to be refreshing for you. If you want to use this, though, to jump back to some longer term timeframes, maybe you want to see what's happened over the last 6 months. You want to see the summary data with a longer term view, maybe even the last year or year to date, any of these different timeframes, you can use this timeframe menu. And as you do that, as you change it, let's say you're looking at 3 months, you'll notice that the mini charts at the top of the page change, and all of the columns in the different panels are going to change to reflect that time frame that you're looking at. You'll actually see that noted in the column headers. So percent change over the last 3 months, 3M, that's actually going to be listed there for you. So keep an eye on that. Really, really helpful, though, to be able to move between these different time frames, especially when you get down to some of the lower panels. The intermarket analysis panel is a great example of this. That's something that I like to think about, not just from day to day, but really over a longer period of time, 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, different timeframes like that. So that timeframe menu is something else that I want to draw your attention to. So we have talked about a lot of things before diving into this page, but I'll talk to you about kind of how this is organized and how I'm using it, what I see on this page right now. So again, this is really tracking with my process and the way that I like to look at the markets. Now, I am kind of a stocks first kind of guy. I admit it. I am a stock junkie. I'm a trader. I love following what's happening with the equity markets. And other things like bonds and commodities and currencies, definitely a bit secondary to me. Important, don't get me wrong, very, very important. And understanding those intermarket relationships and everything that's happening in those markets, everything is related. The world is not isolated. Everything is kind of commingled here. So we do have data on all of that stuff, but we've structured it so that it's a little bit further down the page. You can actually kind of see that with these scroll buttons right here. So we start by really drilling into the equity markets. Then we'll move into things like the intermarket relationships, bonds, commodities, and currencies. If any of that stuff is really important to you, keep in mind that you can always click these buttons to quickly scroll down to any of those panels. So you give bonds a click, it's going to take you down to the page right there. You can quickly access those different panels. Now, I love these little mini charts because it gives me a sense, specifically when I'm looking at this page day to day, gives me a sense of what's happening with the intraday price action, right? I am not a super short-term trader, but I want to know what's happening with in the session, within the session, especially in a market that's moving as quickly as the market is right now. So there's a huge difference between a market that is closing at the highs versus closing at the lows, right? And how are we reacting to news? We've got so much news coming out right now. How are we reacting to different news? How are different indexes behaving during the session is another thing that I'm asking when I'm looking at these mini charts. So are large caps really holding up, but small and mid caps are absolutely selling off? Different questions like that. I like to be able to see the intraday action and to do that across a couple of key averages. These are really kind of the indexes that I like to follow on a daily basis. So we've got the Dow, we've got the NASDAQ, the S&P indexes, the 500, the 400, and the 600, large, mid, and small cap stocks. Then we also have the VIX, of course, and a very, very important volatility metric, especially right now. So much attention paid to the VIX. So we can see we have pulled off those highs. Good thing to see, but still a pretty elevated VIX level up there in the high 20s, kind of low 30s. That's where we've been shopping around. And then also the 10-year yield, another thing that I like to keep a close eye on. So this is a really, really nice way to kind of see that intraday action. Again, those mini charts are going to change as you move through timeframes, which is really helpful. So especially when you look at something like 1 week, now you're actually going to get a little bit more context to how have we moved over the last 5 sessions, different things like that. Now you can scroll back and forth on this. Works really well on touch devices, especially. So I've been using this page a lot on my phone. It's working great for that as well. You can just kind of scroll around, really, really nice. So having that intraday action right up at the top is crucial. Now, by default, we're going to focus on the U.S. indexes here in the equities panel as we start to scroll down this page. I do like to be able to jump over to the global snapshot view, though, and look at kind of how stocks are moving around the world, right? So these aren't specific country indexes. All of these are actually ETFs. We've really leaned into ETFs for most of this page because you're guaranteed to have everything kind of moving around during the session. Everything is tradable. If you say, hey, I really like what's happening with developed markets, VEA, you can actually go pull up that ETF. And if it's interesting to you, you can actually take a position in it. So we've sort of navigated things mostly to be ETF based on this page. Again, something that I really like to focus on. The world is kind of moving that direction, so we are staying up on it. So in the case, for instance, of this kind of global snapshot panel, all of these are actually going to be ETFs. This is sort of the group that I like to see to understand what's happening in different corners of the market. Now we can sort of the global equity markets. We can spin the world in lots of different ways. We can look at the entire world. We can look at the entire world without the U.S. We can look at some of the largest markets in the world, the global 100, developed markets. We can look at some of the smallest markets in the world, like emerging markets. Lots and lots of different ways to spin the global equity markets. Now, I like to look at the relationships between these, see what's working and what's not over different time frames. For instance, for the last, quite a long time, we've had the U.S. outpacing almost everything. What's been interesting, though, this week is this year is we've seen some of those relationships start to change. We've seen a little bit more interest in Europe. That's kind of starting to reverse now that the tariff talks are going in a different direction. But it's been interesting to watch that on this page. So at a quick glance, this gives me a snapshot of kind of what's going on around the world. Again, I'm a stock guy, and I'm primarily focused on the U.S., so this is kind of my default. I'm typically looking at what's happening across the U.S. indexes. Again, percent change values, incredibly important here to understand what's moving, what is not. I also love being able to access these streak values, though. This is something that something new that we're bringing to StockCharts kind of for the first time here with this market summary page, the daily streak and the weekly streak. Now, admittedly, these are columns that are not important until they are important. Typically, you're going to see, maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks up, 1, 2, 3 weeks down. When markets are just kind of moving normally, you're going to see these streak values be pretty low. Right now, we have a market that's kind of trying to decide what the heck it wants to do. So you're seeing these streak values really chop around. When they become interesting is when they start to do things that are unusual. When you start to see, 8 days, 10 days, 12 days up in a row, that becomes something that you want to know about, right? When you start to see 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks in a row for the major averages moving higher, moving lower, any of those kinds of things, those are overbought, oversold conditions that we want to be aware of. So they're going to jump out to you on this page because suddenly you're going to see numbers that you don't typically see. If you ever see a 7 on this page, for instance, in any of these columns, you know that that's something you probably want to pay attention to. So an interesting little sort of data point there for the major averages. And we also have this streak data for a few things further down the page as well. So keep in mind, those are different columns that are kind of not, it's sort of a weird thing to say, but not really useful until they're useful. And at that point, they become really, really useful. A little bit of the same for the moving average columns. So especially right now, right, we've got a market that's been selling off aggressively. And in a lot of cases, we've moved away from some of these moving averages very, very quickly. So you can start to see how stretched this market gets to the downside. For instance, in the market that we have right now, you can start to see how stretched this market gets to the downside when you've got things like the Dow Transports trading 15% below its 200-day moving average, or the S&P 600. This is one I've been watching in particular. Small caps have just been absolutely hammered. And every time that the market has been catching a bid and we've seen things start to rally a little bit, small caps really in most cases have not been participating, still trading very, very close to the lows that we've seen in this big pullback. So you can see how far away from those moving averages things like small caps are right now. Again, sometimes in a healthier market, you'll see these values just sit at kind of more normal numbers. But when you see a market that is like we have right now doing crazy, crazy things, these are the types of columns that give you some really interesting insights. How far away from these different moving averages are we? Now, you can see the exact same thing to the upside. When we see these numbers going way too far above their 200-day moving average, it can tell you that things are getting a little overbought, things are getting a little frothy, and we might be due for a pullback because we're just getting too extended to the upside. We can get extended to the upside, we can get extended to the downside. These are the types of columns that help you see it. So that's kind of how I like to use those. Again, one thing that sticks out to me right now is just how aggressively oversold small caps have been. Not a lot of love. Even when the market does start to find some buyers and we see things ticking up, small caps have really not been participating in a lot of those moves, which is definitely something I'm keeping an eye on. Finally, we've got country funds in here, kind of the same as the global snapshot. This is something that I just like to breeze through and see, which countries are companies. Which countries are really drawing attention from buyers? Which countries are really not participating in the move? Those kinds of things. It's great to kind of keep an eye on different ways to spin the global equity markets and looking at individual countries. Again, all ETFs here, so all tradable actually, which makes this a really interesting panel. Being able to study up on what's happening with some of those different countries and their markets is very, very interesting. Now, one other thing I did want to note on the U.S. indexes panel, I love being able to drill into the index members for each of these. So chances are, if you're thinking about the S&P 500, you're wondering what that major average is doing, you might care about the actual group, the individual stocks that make it up. So in this case, you can actually click that button, pull up our index members page, also linked at the top of the market summary. But you can pull up that index members page. It gives you a really, really great way to drill into all of the individual components of the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, the Dow stocks, any of those kinds of things. You can see which ones are reporting earnings, which ones have high RSI ratings, all of that good stuff. Scooter values, another really important tool, our StockCharts technical rank. You can use that on this page as well. So really nice to be able to drill into the actual indexes that we have here. We've got those linked in a couple of different places around this page, but keep in mind that's what those buttons do. Now, let's continue. We're going to maybe move a little bit faster as we go through here. This is another one of my favorite panels on this page, the Market Factors panel. Tells me a lot about what's happening from day to day, but also longer term. So this is also going to pull in data as we change the time frame. For instance, over the last 1 month or the last 3 months, we can see that this is going to pull in different data. This is going to show you kind of what corners of the market investors are favoring. Now, we had a decent day here on Thursday where we're recording this. So we can see kind of what was in favor. In this case, we can see small cap revenue really moving to the upside. The biggest performer, you can see it's the darkest green square there. As we change this to, well, let's try 1 week. So here we start to get a little bit of a blend, right? We can see large cap growth really actually pretty out of favor over the last 5 sessions. We can see some of the other corners of the market, mid caps and small caps, despite what I was just saying about not catching a bid. Mid caps and small caps actually some of the strongest corners. In this case, we can see the market spun by all of these different factors: value, well, core, value, growth, revenue, momentum, low volatility, and quality. All of those different factors that we can spin the indexes by, we can see all of those across here. So I like to be able to drill into what's happening, again, across cap levels, but also across these different factors. What kind of character is the market giving us right now? Do we have a really growthy market? Do we have a really kind of value-oriented market? Are people more concerned, and so they're favoring things like low volatility stocks? Or are they going for the growthy corners of the market? Lots and lots of different ways that we can spin that market, right? So this market factors map tells us a lot about that character. So in this case, really interesting to kind of see what's been actually working over the last, in this case, I like to say 1 week. Over the last 5 sessions, we've actually seen mid caps really gain a lot of attention, small caps a little bit as well, but some of that participation hasn't been making its way to large caps, which has been interesting. We've seen some corners of the large caps, especially things like Nvidia, really having kind of a tough time with the tariff talks. It's been volatile to say the least. But we can see some of that reflected here on this market factors map. Now, next up, I like to review this Keller market models, kind of, again, another map, right? So this is based on Dave Keller's approach to kind of defining the short-term trend of the market, the intermediate-term trend of the market, the mid-term of the market, and the long-term trend of the market. We can do that across 2 different models that Dave has created. First is a macro model that'll look at stocks, bonds, commodities, and the US dollar. In this case, we can see the short-term trend across all of those major assets as Dave has defined it using these weekly PPO values. This is down. The intermediate-term trend, also down. The long-term trend for most things is down. A lot of downtrending things right now. That is a theme. We can see those short, medium-term, and long-term trends, though, for the macro model, also for the stocks model. In this case, quite a similar view. The short-term trend just clearly lower as defined by Keller's market model. The medium-term trend is also just down across the board for large caps, mid caps, for small caps, the Russell 2000, and also for that more tech-heavy NASDAQ 100. Everything really is down across the board. Now, again, in the theme of everything on this page being clickable, if you want to see exactly why these arrows point in a particular direction, well, give that name a click. That's going to pull up a chart that's actually going to show you exactly what we're talking about here. So the way that Dave has done these market models, he's got a short-term PPO setup. This is a weekly chart, so all on the weekly. Short-term weekly chart PPO setup, an intermediate-term weekly chart PPO setup, and a long-term as well. If any of these are above 0, it means uptrend. If any of these are below 0, it means downtrend. It's a pretty simple model. In this case, though, we can see that everything except for the long-term trend is on is sitting below 0 across those PPO indicators, and so that's why we have downtrends in the short term and the intermediate term trend. So we can see those for all of these different assets, and if we want to see all of them together, we can actually open up the stocks model, and in this case, we can get all of those different charts opened in a list. This is a great example, great opportunity to pause and say that Market Summary ChartPack, that's going to put all this stuff in your account. So definitely another reason to install that into your own account. You do have a way to see those quickly if you do want to just kind of take a glance at all the charts. You can see them individually if you care about any of those, or again, install that chart back in your account. You'll get all of those. In this case, what I'm taking away from this panel is the short-term trend is down. The intermediate-term trend is down. The long-term trend might still be up in a couple of these different indexes. Mid and small caps, again, still not getting much love, but the short-term and the intermediate-term trend are clearly down when it comes to this market model. So that tells me something about this market. Now, next up is something I want to focus on a little bit for right now, the breadth panels and the bullish percent index panels. To me, this kind of tells the story of the market that we have here right now. In the last session, we did have a decent number of stocks advancing, right? These aren't super high numbers, but they are pretty high. Generally around the mid to high 70s number of stocks across these different indexes advancing. When we have a low number of declining stocks and we just don't have very many things going down, that's also bullish. So that's why this is also going to be colored green. You can follow along with that little legend that we have at the bottom. In this case, the latest session, Thursday's session, pretty decent, right? We had a reasonably high number of stocks across the board that were advancing on the day. We didn't have that many stocks that were declining on the day. So that's nice to see. That is bullish. If we click over, though, to the moving averages map, well, this is where things start to get a little bit bearish. And to me, this really tells the story of this market right now. So what this is measuring is percentage of stocks across these different major averages that are trading above these key moving averages. What percentage of the S&P 500 is trading above its 20-day, its 50-day, its 100-day, or its 200-day, for instance? In this case, we can see that this breadth map is still very, very red. Now, this is not quite as much of a bloodbath as it was a couple of weeks ago. It's still pretty ugly, though. This is not good. I don't want to see red across the board on this map. I want to start to see a little bit of neutral. I want to ideally see a little bit of green. But in this case, we've seen just not a lot of stocks trading above those key moving averages. The only bright spot here is that these numbers are starting to get better. So again, this coloring is kind of your guide here. The darker the red, the worse it is. The lighter the red, that's a little bit better. If it's yellow, if it's green, if it's dark green, that is something good to see. In this case, this map was a lot darker, had a lot darker red. Even just a couple of days ago, we have seen some of these numbers start to tick up. So we've seen more stocks recovering. We've seen some stocks recovering some of those key moving averages. So these breadth numbers are trending up. They're ticking up. They were at pretty extreme lows, though. And we can see that actually if we click on any of these names. So for instance, the NASDAQ, we can see that chart. We can actually see those breadth numbers charted over time. So here's the NASDAQ itself, and up top we have the percentage of stocks above their 20-day moving average, the percentage above their 50, the percentage above their 100, and the percentage above their 200. So as you can see, I mean, just a couple of days ago, these numbers were at pretty extreme lows. We typically do not see extreme lows like this very often. It is pretty rare to see these numbers get as low as they were just a couple of sessions ago. So the good news is that things are bouncing. The bad news is, I mean, they're bouncing off of pretty extreme lows, right? Now, we do need to see these recover in order for the market to recover. So it's great to see them bouncing. The question is, at what point do we kind of recover some levels that actually say, okay, things are starting to recover here, starting to get a little bit better. We can start to get a little bit more bullish. Again, for me, the helpful thing about a map like this is that you can use the coloring as your kind of guide. Once you start to see some yellow boxes across this map, you know that things are going to start to get a little bit better. Things are getting back up into the neutral territory, and we're going to see these numbers starting to recover. The higher that we get, the lighter that those boxes are going to get. We're going to get out of the red boxes. We're going to get up into the yellows. So I do want to see these recover a little bit more, especially something like the NASDAQ. I want to see things get a little bit better, over 25% at least. But again, one bright spot is when you see these extreme lows and then you see that breadth bounce, you see things kind of snap back up. That's kind of the time to buy, especially on the long side. We want to wait for the breadth numbers to recover a little bit. We want to wait for things to get better. But those extreme lows can be some incredible buying opportunities, especially, again, over the long term. So keep an eye on these breadth charts. That's definitely something I'm watching. I'm watching the maps, but I'm also watching the individual charts. Once again, you can open up that charts menu, look for that moving averages link, and take a look at those. Keep an eye on those charts. Now, similar thing goes for the bullish percent indexes. These are just all sitting in the red except for the NASDAQ 100 has recovered just a little bit. That's good to see. This is measuring the percentage of stocks across these major averages that are trading on a PNF buy signal. So bullish PNF charts, what percentage of stocks in these indexes have bullish PNF charts, basically. In this case, again, lots of red. These breadth maps are just kind of a sea of red at the moment. It's a bit of a bloodbath. Again, not quite as bad as it was, but still a bit of a bloodbath. I want to see things start to get a little bit better. I want to see more of this yellow color across this breadth map before I start to feel a little bit better about stocks participating in the upside move. We can do the exact same thing across the sectors, and now we are starting to see a little bit more yellow, right? We're starting to see things like utilities, real estate, info, tech. That's basically the tech industry. Consumer staples and consumer and energy starting to recover a little bit. We're seeing more stocks on a PNF buy signal across those indexes. Now, one that I left out was gold miners. That has been a total outlier here. Gold has been incredibly strong, not just lately, but really over the last couple of years, gold's actually been pretty strong. So gold miners actually are one that is a space that does have a high percentage of stocks that are doing bullish stuff right now on those PNF charts. Lots of gold miners on PNF buy signals. So that is a clear outlier on this map. But still, not a sea of red, but it's not a sea of yellow at the moment. So I'm still pretty cautious, especially when you put this together with some of those other breadth maps that we were just looking at. Now, if you want to see all of this kind of charted in one group, again, you've got that chart right there. You can actually see those major BPIs, see a chart for those major BPIs. And a similar story. We can see things bouncing off of pretty extreme lows. Great to see the bounce, but I want to see a little bit more recovery. Again, I want to see this map in particular start to get out of the red zone and up into that yellow zone. I want to see this yellow color sprinkled out across more of this chart. By the way, good opportunity to pause for a second and say, these little icons up in the top right corner, this has some helpful info for you as you're going along through this page. If you ever have questions about what these different things mean, we've put together these little tooltips that will actually give you some more information about the different things in this panel. We'll take a look at that in a sec with our sentiment panels. Really helpful there. Next up, I like to scan for new highs and new lows. That's pretty much my system. That's where I find most of my ideas, especially on the long side. I'm scanning for stocks across the major indexes, making new highs across different time frames. I'm reviewing the charts and I'm finding the ones that look good. That's kind of my system in a nutshell. So we've actually taken some of that approach and we've put panels on this page that kind of turn those scans into a breadth measurement, turn those scans into kind of a market analysis type of panel. So what this is going to do, again, all of these different major groups, major indexes, we're going to take the scans that we're running for all-time highs, 52-week highs, 9-month, 6-month, 3-month, and 1-month highs. And we're going to show you the percentage of stocks in those indexes that have triggered those scans in the latest session or over the last week. So in this case, you can look at what percentage of stocks in the S&P 500, let's say, hit a new 9-month high yesterday or in the latest session. In this case, we can get a quick answer to that. We can see 0.4% of the S&P 500 hit a 9-month high in the last session. Interesting. Now, we can also click on that. And we can actually see the stocks. In this case, that's only 2 stocks, so not a lot to review. We can quickly jump over and actually see charts of both of those stocks. We could even save them to our account if we want. Again, that theme of everything on this page is clickable. Remember that you can click on any of these links to actually open up the scan results. So if you're curious to know, okay, what were the 20% of Dow utilities that hit 1-month highs in the latest session? Well, you can give that 20% a click and you can see all 3 of those names right there. So that is the daily panel. Again, daily highs is going to be stocks making these new highs over the latest session. The weekly highs panel is going to do a very similar thing, but it's going to show you at any point during the last week what made a new high across these different time frames. So stocks that made a new all-time high this week, stocks that made a new 9-month high this week, different things like that. So really nice to be able to see those numbers, but also really nice to be able to actually click over and see the results, get the individual names. Now, you can see this in chart form as well. We can actually see that new highs list. This is going to be new 52-week highs in this case, which is kind of the most common time frame that people like to measure. In this case, we can see that new highs list across pretty much all of these indexes has been moving in what direction? Down. Not a lot of things making new highs at the moment, especially 52-week highs and all-time highs, different things like that. If we do see the market continue to move higher, we're going to see some things that start to make a 1-month high, maybe even a 3-month high. But for now, again, these new highs lists are just not looking very good. Things are selling off and not moving back up. Not moving back up too quickly, at least. So the new highs list is not really a thing of beauty at the moment. We can do the exact same thing with new lows. So we can measure the percentage of stocks across these different indexes that are making new lows on a daily basis or at some point this week. All of the same things that we just talked about with the new highs panel apply to the new lows panel. Now, my favorite view here is to click over to chart for both of these. And in this case, you can see the new highs lists and the new lows lists right next to each other. You can see what's happening. Are stocks making more highs or more lows? Well, in this case, it's pretty obvious to me that the new lows list has spiked across the board. Look at those immense spikes in new lows. Lots and lots and lots of stocks across all of these indexes making new lows. Now, we've seen that cool off a little bit because the market's caught a little bit of a bid. We're bouncing, right? So the new lows list has gone kind of back down. But this is still very, very clear. We had a huge spike in the number of stocks making new lows, and you can see that very, very clearly on this chart. That is a total departure from what you're seeing over here on the green side. Not a lot of stocks making new highs, right? So the fact that you can see both of these lists together, very, very nice. And you can click on either of these to open up a chart for those. Again, you can also click that charts link, that drop down, and you can open up any of those lists. So we'll click this back over so that we can kind of slim things down. But really, really helpful to be able to see those together. Similarly, seeing things together on this one page, we've got our sentiment panel. Now, the VIX has been a huge story of this current market. Obviously, we've seen this massive spike in the VIX. Now we've seen it cool off. We're back down into the 20s, which is great. But a VIX at the high 20s really spent most of the latest session in the 30s. That's still not very good. That's not what I want to see. Now, we can see that spike in the VIX right here if we click over to volatility chart. So this is going to give us a longer-term view. Again, we have that mini chart at the top of the page. It gives us that short-term view of the VIX. But in this case, we can see the VIX spiking all the way up to the low 60s at that peak recently. So huge spike. I mean, it's great to see the VIX back down in the 20s. But again, this is a very, very elevated level. Now, in this little tooltip, again, I mentioned that we had some helpful stuff in here. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to thinking about the VIX is the rule of 16. So divide the VIX by 16. That's kind of a back of the envelope way to think about what the VIX it means. That means kind of the expected move. It tells you the expected move that people are thinking about for the S&P 500. So in this case, actually, since we're really, really close to the example that we have here today, when the VIX is sitting at 32, if you divide it by 16, that means that the expected move in the S&P 500 is about 2%. A 2% average daily move is kind of what the VIX is signaling for SPX. That is a pretty wide move. So you can tell, again, a VIX in the low 30s, a VIX up near 32, that's still a lot of volatility. That's down from those highs, down from the 60s, which is great, but that is still a very elevated VIX. So fear index, as we call it, still up, volatility still elevated. We are not really in a bullish regime here for the VIX. Now, we've drawn some of these lines across this volatility chart, which is nice to see. So that red, again, is kind of the ultra caution zone. That orange, though, a VIX, anything above 20 for the VIX is really nothing to be too excited about. So you can see those lines here, and we can see we've just really come down to elevated levels. Not crazy elevated levels, but we're not really returning to normal numbers here anytime soon for the VIX. So nice to be able to see that. A couple of the other indexes that we track here in the sentiment panel, we've got put-call ratios, both total and equities only. So a couple of different ways to think about put calls. That's basically what traders are doing, right? Are traders more bearish and they're putting on more puts? Are traders more bullish and they're putting on more calls? How are traders engaging with the market? This is measuring actually participation. You can think about it as sentiment, but it's really traders kind of voting with their feet. Where are traders going? What are they doing? We've also got a couple of other key sentiment indexes that are really interesting, especially when you pair them with the put-call ratios. So we have the NAAIM. This is a North American investment managers, active investment managers. What is their exposure like? Are money managers buying more stocks, adding more long exposure, or are money managers getting out of the markets and kind of going to cash or maybe even going to more bearish assets, going against the market? So we can measure that with that NAAIM. I always have to say that slowly. Exposure index. We can pair that with the RIDEX asset ratio, which again is measuring bearish assets and money market funds versus bullish assets. When this thing is moving lower, as you're going to see on just the chart in just a sec, that means that money is really flowing either out of long equities or long assets into money markets, or also flowing into bearish assets. So a really interesting way to, again, measure sentiment and participation out there in the market. We can also look at individual investors. That's going to be the AA. Now, this has been an interesting story for the recent sell-off that we've seen, because the AA Bulls Bears survey, it's a weekly survey of investors in the AA organization. Again, retail investors, folks like us that are managing our own money. This survey actually went negative quite early. So a lot of people were saying, hey, retail investors were kind of up on what was going to happen before this sell-off. So another really interesting one to see. Again, we can click on anything in this chart in this page to pull up a chart of that index. In this case, we can see that change in character for the AAI index really, really clearly here, kind of back up near the all-time highs. Actually, the AAI survey went negative and ended up being kind of right on the money there. So interesting to see. So pull up a chart for that one. That's another interesting one to study. I like to combine those three that we were just talking about, though, into this chart. Again, this is something that's straight out of my process. This is put-call ratios, the investment manager's exposure index, and the RIDEX asset ratio, kind of all in one. So if you see traders getting a little bit more bearish, you're going to see this move up more towards that red line. When traders get a little bit more bullish, a little more complacent, you'll see this move towards that green line. In this case, we're actually kind of sitting in the middle. We've cooled off just a little bit, but definitely I would say still leaning more towards the bearish. Traders are definitely putting on more puts than calls, especially. This is moving towards the bullish territory, right? And then we can look at investment managers. In this case, this is an ultra low reading. Investment managers are just not going long. We've got 35% long exposure. That is very, very low. Now, having looked at this chart for a long period of time, I can tell you that is a low number. You can see it on this chart right now. If you give this a click, draw the time frame back out, you can see that is a very, very low number. Just not a lot of long exposure out there among active investment managers. That RIDEX asset ratio, too, I mentioned if this is going lower, that means money flowing out of bullish assets over to money market funds and even bearish assets. So we can see that this is also very, very low. So not a lot of bullish activity here on the positioning and exposure chart. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Again, these are things that you can get in that chart pack. So you can pull that chart up here. You can give this a click, actually. Pull up that individual chart. You can also pull up that list. But if you install that Market Summary ChartPack, you'll actually get this right into your own account. Next up, offense and defense ratios. Is the money favoring more offensive corners of the market or defensive corners of the market? Again, this is one that I like to look at over a longer period of time. If we look at this over the last 1 month, if these are going down, that means that investors are favoring defensive assets. If these numbers are going up, if things are green here, that means we're favoring offensive corners of the market, like discretionary and technology over staples and utilities. In this case, well, it's pretty obvious. Nothing is really flowing towards offensive corners of the market. We've got a market that's just moving to the downside. We got a lot of money rotating out of bullish assets. Now we know that we have money rotating more towards defensive assets instead of offensive assets. That is not a bullish kind of character for this market. So definitely something I'm keeping an eye on. Being able to see this over a longer period of time there is interesting. But again, you can click on any of those to pull up that ratio. Or if you click that ratios chart button, this will actually put all of those ratios on one chart for you. So you can see in this case, again, if these lines are moving down, that means that we are favoring the defensive part of that ratio. We're favoring the second factor in the ratio. And so in this case, all of these lines moving down, that means that we're seeing a lot more favoring of defensive assets over offensive assets, defensive corners of the market, defensive sectors, that kind of thing. So a really interesting one. Ratios that I've liked to follow for a long time. You can now actually see those here and pull up a chart of those as well. Now we're going to kind of fly through from here because we have gone on for quite a while. But we've got a couple of different ways to spin the U.S. sectors. In this case, I like to use the scooter scores on these because it's the same criteria applied to all of these different groups. And especially for sector funds, you can compare it to the S&P 500 as well. And since we're using ETFs here, you can compare scooter values across all of these. We've got actually SPY, which is the S&P 500 ETF. That has a scooter score. And so you can see different sectors that are the strongest, different sectors that are the weakest when you sort this by scooter. And you can actually see how that compares to the S&P 500 itself. So you can see the sectors that have a scooter score that's stronger than the S&P 500. Again, scooter stands for StockCharts technical rank. That's why we call it scooter. In this case, we can see staples and utilities just by far the strongest. Financial still kind of holding in there as well. 60 is not a great scooter score. 90 is a pretty great scooter score, but it's for staples. So again, not a very bullish thing for this market. In this case, we can see the sectors that are the strongest. I don't love to see staples and utilities leading this board. I don't like to see technology at the absolute bottom of this board. Consumer discretionary not getting as bad of a bid as materials, I guess you could say, but I mean, still not really great to see that, especially with the scooter score at 26. So sector positioning here for the cap weight, just very clearly not that bullish. That's how I would spin that. We've got a couple of different ways to think about sectors, though. It can go beyond just the cap weight. So we've also got our equal weight board, and we've got our small cap board as well. In this case, we can see small cap sectors really not great. Again, small caps, that's kind of a theme. Not doing too hot in the current market. We can see that reflected across these small cap sectors, all of which have very, very ugly scooter scores. Not a thing of beauty there. Among the equal weight, things are a little bit better. We got a little more green and yellow on this board. But again, we've got staples and utilities right up at the top here, so not too much bullish positioning on the equal weight sectors as well. Now we can look at industry groups as well if we want to really get granular, drill down into some of the individual Dow industry groups. There are about 104 of these. And we also, similar to what we did with the sectors, we've got the Dow in here as well. You're going to have to scroll around to find it, but there is the Dow Industrials here as well. So you can see kind of what's outperforming the Dow itself. So an interesting way to spin that. I like to stay focused, though, on what we call our bellwether industries. So these are different industry groups that are kind of bellwethers for the stock market, bellwethers for the economy. So these are kind of the key industry groups that I like to follow, especially things like semiconductors and home builders, retail stocks. If you're going to see a market that's moving higher, if things are really, really bullish, if times are really, really good, you're probably going to see things like semiconductors and home builders and retail stocks doing well. Right now, yeah, we haven't really seen that. Retail stocks not doing that great over the last month, not doing that great over the last, let's say, 3 months. Semiconductors actually doing quite a lot worse. But these are the types of industries that we would want to see, doing well. If the market is going to be moving higher, if we're going to feel good about the market, we want these kind of industries to be doing well. When these industries are not doing well, it tells us something about the character of that market. Very, very similar kind of concept to what we talked about up here with offense and defense. Now, from there, we can drill into intermarket relationships. We can also drill into bonds. Again, all of this stuff is clickable. And the way that I like to use the intermarket panel is to drag this out to something longer, like a 6-month time frame, and see what's working. In this case, we can see gold clearly the strongest asset on that intermarket board. We can see that charted here as well. Really nice tip. Give this chart a click. This is going to open up that full size of that chart. And from here, you can actually drag the range out. I like to think about intermarket relationships over a longer period of time. So drag this relationship out to 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Really use this to kind of study market behavior across cycles. That's when this gets really interesting. But again, this is another one that's going to be installed directly into your account with that chart pack. You can hit that charts button. That's going to actually open all of these up in a list that you can scroll through. And if you want to save that to your account, you can do that with that big green button in the top. But again, install that Market Summary ChartPack. You'll get that in your own account. Bonds, a couple of different ways to spin that. Same kind of deal, though. Give that chart a click. That's going to open it up, and you can really study those yield movements over a longer period of time. Now, one trick here, we're just kind of explaining how this panel works. You can turn off the end of day checkbox. That's going to actually bring in those intraday yields. Gives you a little bit different flavor. I like to think about bonds, again, not as much during the day. I do follow the 10-year yield, how that's moving. But I like to think about yields at the end of the day and kind of think about those mostly at the end of the week, to be honest. So I usually keep this on the end of day checkbox. That gives me those actual end of day treasury yields, which is nice to be able to see. You can compare those values. It's going to go right down the time frame. And if you really want to study how yields look, you can definitely jump over to that dynamic yield curve. That'll actually give you kind of an interactive way to review the yield curve. Finally, we've got a couple of other assets. Now, the ones that I really like to follow, again, I'm mostly a stocks guy, to be honest. So not as much into commodities and currencies. We do, and cryptos as well. We do have those on this page. These are the key assets, though, that I really like to study, especially on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis as well and beyond. Now, obviously, you got to know what Bitcoin is doing, so we've got that listed here as well as Ethereum. But we've got the CRB index, we've got oil, nat gas, we've got gold, silver, copper, and the U.S. dollar. So that kind of key assets group, that's a key group to pay attention to. Even if you're like me and you're mostly focused on equity markets, definitely keep an eye on these key assets. It's a really nice way to understand what's going on with some of those other key markets and other key assets. If you do want to drill into commodities, you've got that group right here. And once again, you can click on any of these charts to open up something that's going to be nicely formatted for that index. In this case, we're looking at platinum, We can see a nice chart of platinum. We've got a 200-day moving average. This is a 1.5-year chart, and we've got the RSI down at the bottom. So if you do want to just kind of get started with a nice chart for any of those commodities, any of those currency pairs as well, we've got those for you. You can also click those links. And we do have the daily and weekly streak values for these different assets. I like to be able to see that. Again, if you see one of these commodities that's absolutely flying up and it's closing, some huge daily streak or some huge weekly streak, you'll be able to see that. You'll recognize when these numbers start to get a little excessive. This is, kind of one gas trick ticking up 5 days in a row. That's something to be aware of. Or maybe sugar ticking down for weeks in a row. Things that'll will jump out to you. But when you see things, 7, 8, 9, 10, that'll really jump off the page at you. So definitely be aware of those streak values. I think you'll find them interesting as you start to use this thing over time. Again, we've got all of the lists in here. You'll get these with that Market Summary Chart Pack. But if you want to quickly review charts for all of these major commodities, maybe that's how you want to look at these instead of looking at the data tables. Maybe you want to look at the actual charts. You can open up that list and just kind of scroll through all of these different commodities. These will be in alphabetical order, but you can see all of those different key commodities kind of all in one place. This is a really, really nice feature of that page. Same for currencies. You can see all of those right here. And for cryptos, if you do want to open those up, you can jump to that other crypto page. That'll actually take you to our crypto-specific page. So we've got that linked here as opposed to kind of putting it directly in the market summary, but that is accessible right there. Finally, across the bottom of this page, we've got a couple other resources that I want to make sure you're aware of. Our earnings calendar, that is going to become incredibly crucial right now as earnings season picks up. You're going to want to be using that one. So you got a link to that down at the bottom. That index members page also linked up at the top. Definitely a helpful way, though, to drill into things like the S&P 500 or the Dow stocks, the NASDAQ 100, any of that good stuff. Seasonality charts, kind of a long-term type of thing that I like to use, but that's a link down there. Different ways to see the markets with market carpets as well, kind of those heat maps of different groups. And finally, if you do want to study some longer-term charts, we've got our historical chart gallery down there at the bottom. So that's a lot of stuff. We just covered a lot of stuff. Now, most of these videos we typically do are a little bit shorter. But when we release a tool, a feature like this that is just so huge, oh man, it ends up being a little bit of a bear. But thank you so much for tuning in, for joining me, for sticking around, for all of this explanation of everything that's here packed into our new market summary page. Again, the idea behind this page is that it really is a single source. It's a kind of a one-stop shop, a market dashboard that you can use. It has been professionally curated for you. Everything that you need to see, everything that you need to use to understand exactly what's happening in the markets, it's all right here for you. And now, because you have that market summary chart pack as well, you got the page, you got all the data, and all the maps and everything that you need. You also got the lists, you got the charts, everything that you need to really study every different corner of the markets. It's all there for you. Remember, you can pull up those individual charts, those individual lists right there from the market summary page. But I highly recommend you go install that market summary chart pack into your own account. Start to make those things your own. Add the indicators that matter to you. Change the time frames to whatever makes sense for you. Really start to customize that and kind of build your own market summary process. Again, based on what we've created here with this market summary tool, but build that into your own StockCharts account. Customize things. Really start to make it your own. It's a great starting place, and out of the box, I'm sure that you're going to get a ton of value out of the lists and the charts that are in that market summary chart pack. But remember, you can always customize it, make it your own. It's a really, really great way to kind of infuse your approach, your process into your StockCharts account, into some of these tools that we have here. So again, thank you so much for joining me for a tour of that market summary chart pack and the new market summary page. Let us know what you think. It has been a ton of fun to hear from you guys in the last week since we rolled all this stuff out. We've had some great feedback. It's been fun to connect with different folks around the internet through our support channels and on Twitter and different places. So much good love for this new page. But let us know what you think. If there's anything that you still need, if there's anything that you would love to see on this page, let us know. We are all ears. Hopefully, it's pretty complete for you out of the box there. But we're always listening. Always want to make sure that your voice is heard here on StockCharts. So reach out to our team. They're standing by. Let us know what you think of this new market page and also that market summary chart pack. Thank you again for tuning in. Again, remember, if you liked this video, give it a like down below. give us some love here on the video. Subscribe to the channel though for more great content. We've got so many contributors, myself, but Dave Keller, Marielle McGonigal, Tom Boley, Joe Rabel, so many awesome folks, Julius de Kempenaar, and the list is only growing. I'll say that for now, but we've got plenty more voices coming to the channel very soon. Also writing for us here on StockCharts.com. So check out StockCharts.com/articles for more of that good stuff as well. But give the channel a subscribe, follow us for more great content. We'll be doing more stuff every week coming at you here on StockCharts TV. So thanks for tuning in. My name is Grayson Roze, Chief Strategist here at StockCharts.com. I'll see you again soon for another one. But until then, keep calm and chart on, my friends.